Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining the Australian Red Cross for our first Recovery Uncovered webinar of this year on planning and managing disaster anniversaries. My name's Erin, and I'm the National Manager at Australian Red Cross, and I, as always, am really happy to have you join us today. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands in which we are all joining from. I'm joining from Naarm on Wurundjeri country. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present, and any Aboriginal leaders in the room joining us today. I'd also like to pay my respects to the traditional owners that you're joining us from today. If you'd like to put the traditional lands and the people that you're joining from in the chat, we always like to know who's joining us and from where. And I'd like to acknowledge that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have been marking days of remembrance and celebration for many years on a lot of different topics. And I'd just like to thank everyone for being here today. Just some housekeeping before we get started. We are recording the session today, and it will be available after today's event. We'll be using the Q&A function, so any questions you have of the panelists, if you could put those in the Q&A function, not in the chat function. I'll do my best to sort of double check at the end, but it's much easier to pop the questions for the panelists in the Q&A function, which is right down next to the chat function. If you like someone else's question, you can give it a thumbs up, and that will sort of push it up the list. And so we'll try to ask the most popular questions first. And I encourage you to use the chat window to share any thoughts or reflections, but just a reminder to keep it kind and caring in our chat today. So this is the 6th webinar of the Recovery Uncovered series presented by the Disaster Recovery Mentors, which is hosted by Australian Red Cross. The Disaster Recovery Mentors program is coordinated by Red Cross and aims to support disaster-affected communities, their leaders and practitioners who are supporting people after a disaster. As part of the Disaster Recovery Mentors program, the Recovery Uncovered webinar series has been designed to provide people with support, with guidance and reflections from a community perspective. So today's session, we're joined by Disaster Recovery Mentors Joe Graham and Steve Pascoe. Steve is a resident from Strathewan who lost his home in 2009 Black Saturday Bushfires. He has over 30 years in emergency management, starting in the CFA in the State Emergency Service and then working in all levels of government as a bushfire safety facilitator, emergency management coordinator, and consultant at all levels of government. After the Black Saturday bushfires, Steve was one of the community leaders who established the Strathewan Community Renewal Association and has served on many committees locally and in the district. Joining Steve is Joe Graham, who played a significant role managing the recovery of the school after the Kurnell Tornado destroyed and damaged multiple homes and damaged the school in 2016. She was instrumental in coordinating the recovery and well-being of the students, parents and staff, and was recognised in 2017 when the school was awarded a Resilient Australia Award. A significant part of Joe's work was the coordination of the 1 year on anniversary event, and it included lots of different interactive sessions and workshops with the community and emergency services. And I believe it's the 10-year anniversary this year of that event. Thank you so much, Joe and Steve, for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to your presentation, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from our guests and our participants about what they're hoping to get from today's chat. Over to you. We'll be talking about the significance of anniversaries, the importance of marking at different time points after a disaster, tips and tricks on planning and managing for disaster anniversaries, the importance of community-led recovery, how to include or impacts on children and young people, and also celebrating the strength and resilience of community members. Thank you so much. I'm going to throw to you, Steve, if you wouldn't mind coming off mute.
Unmute myself. There you go. Thanks, Erin. Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Pascoe. I live in Strathewan. I've got a lot of experience in disaster management, and particularly from 2009 onwards, personal experience, and a lot of experience in working with other communities and helping them through the impact and the after effects of disasters. Next slide, please, Carmel. Thank you. So Strathewan was devastated by the Black Saturday Bushfires in 2009, as was large sections of Victoria. In Strathewan, we're a small community, a population of about 200 plus, about 100 houses, 80 of which disappeared on that day. Within about 2 hours, the bushfire did a lot of damage. That's my house there in the photo. My wife and I and our 24-year-old daughter survived in that house. We were able to move around once it caught fire, to be outside and sheltering in corners and around. And so over about an hour and a half, we were under life threat, and we managed to survive quite happily, I think largely thanks to my background and my knowledge. Anyway, enough about me. 29 people died, which was a major impact on our community and continues to be. A number of them were movers and shakers in our community, and we had to reform as a community afterwards. So the loss of life was kind of extreme. But there were a whole bunch of other losses as well that we needed to cope with, deal with, remember. The loss of our hall, the school, fire station, sports pavilion, which was all our community infrastructure. That was all we had as far as community buildings. Livestock and pets, they're a huge thing. Loss of pets is a dramatic and terrible thing. Our history, lots of stuff just disappeared, and we were left with memories, but not a lot of artefacts. Our sense of security, that we thought we were okay. We sort of got used to hot, dry winter summers, and we got not a lot of information about the fire. We didn't think it was going to actually impact Strathewan, but it did, and it came as a bit of a surprise to some people. And the loss of our beautiful natural environment. We live in a lovely semi-rural area, some agriculture, but lots of conservation properties. We're back onto the Kinglake National Park, so it's a beautiful natural environment which for about 6 months disappeared completely, but then grew back, and it was a good sell for our hurt people. Thanks, Carmel. So I have led a couple of anniversary events since 2009, most memorably the 10th anniversary, which was a very big event. And we relied on Dr. Rob Gordon for a lot of advice on what was important. Why do we do anniversaries? Why are they important? And a lot of this information comes from a YouTube video that he has done, Anniversaries for Significant Events. So have a look at that, and you'll understand the value of doing anniversaries. So the importance of anniversaries. They allow us to understand the impact of the event on our lives and enables us to retake control of our lives. And we were just chatting before about losing control over your life is one of the biggest and most challenging impacts of disasters. You become part of a process, you become part of I don't know, you become controlled, you fit into a system, the system works around you and on you, and it's very difficult. And it's important to take control of your life. So understanding what happened and recognising it is important as we to move forward. Ceremonies and rituals and symbols are part of our normal life. We all have them. We sometimes don't recognise them, but we all do things, and they're all part of how we measure our life and how we, over time, but also as a value. So using anniversaries and various ceremonies, but incorporating rituals and symbols into that is a useful thing. Marking the passing of time is a really critical thing. I know from our own experience that, 1 year sort of moved into another year. We lost track of time completely. Even still, sort of not so bad now, but sort of over the first 10 years, it seemed like the bushfire was like yesterday, but also a lifetime ago. It was still fresh, but it was kind of remote. So it's being able to put that into place and talk about it with other impacted people is a really useful thing. Placing the event into our history, and I'll talk a bit more about this around the 10th anniversary, is a critical moment where you get a chance to put what happened into your history or into the history of the community and look forward to the future. If you don't have that, life just goes on and it continues to be just the impact of the disaster. You need to sort of put it somewhere at some stage. And I'm going to use the words move on. Terrible thing, never use that. But it is about reshaping your life, acknowledging the time that's passed and where you're going in the future. And that's a healthy thing to do. Remembering what has happened is fairly critical. I know of other communities not too far away that anniversaries weren't done well, and it was almost as if people didn't want to remember. They become locked in the event itself, and they can't shift, they can't change. They're still, when we had a 10th anniversary, I was talking to people from this community and they said, we're not allowed to even talk about the fire. So it was still hurting and it was still doing damage. So remembering what has happened and actually acknowledging it, that it did happen, and getting together and talking about it is really, really healthy for individuals and for the community. Acknowledging achievements is really important. So that's dragging the positives out of what has happened and looking at what you've achieved. Even in the first year, I can't believe how hard we worked in the first year, just continually getting our lives into some sort of non-chaotic position. So actually acknowledging what we've achieved over that time is good. Recognising the people who supported, helped and led. Once we stop thinking and worrying about ourselves, we have a bit of time to think about the people around us who helped us, and the emergency services and the support services and the local council and broader community. And recognising them is critical, not only for our gratefulness, I guess, but also critical for them, because they hurt and they often don't get a chance to join in, or they feel a bit alienated. So it's important to recognise all other people as well that might be impacted. And the looking to the future is a positive thing. If you don't have a marker in time to go, well, that's my history, but this is where I'm going in the future. And over years, that changes in terms of the percentage of what's important. For the first few years, the event is pretty big and fairly critical to manage. and looking to the future is a bit of a pipe dream at times. But as we move along, looking to the future is really valuable and gives us somewhere to go, gives us some positivity. And Dr. Rob also talks from a personal perspective that having a marker in time, an anniversary, is an opportunity to say, what are my needs for the next year? Actually developing a bit of plan for yourself that, yes, this is what happened last year, but now what will I do next year? What are my needs? How can I do that? Thanks, Carmel. I wanted to include in here in this talk some critical timings. The first year is really very big. I can remember coming up to the first anniversary of the 2009 bushfires. I was not myself, I don't think. I felt very angry. I felt pretty depressed. It was a really tough time, and I thought it was just me, but when I spoke to others, they said the same thing. It seems to be a natural occurrence. It seems to be something built into our time frames, or something that as we're approaching the anniversary of an event, we become anxious and a bit tense and a bit, not good to live with often. And that was particularly for the first year. And it's important to have a good event so people can feel okay with that, but also feel okay that they're normal, that they're like everyone else, and that there is something in the future. So in the first year, it's important to acknowledge the event, probably most important to actually acknowledge that it had occurred and what it was, to remember the losses respectfully. I can remember that I was working with working on the team that were planning our first anniversary, and at that stage there were still coroner's inquiries, there was still a lot of challenges about the people who had died, and we didn't feel that it was okay to actually say their names out of respect. So we didn't name the people who died. We kind of alluded to their locations in our area. So, we remember the people who lived up this road and that road, and our losses around this area and such things. So it's being respectful for those who have lost and for those who died, and thinking carefully about how you organise that so that you can be real and honest, but not be hurtful. It's also important to acknowledge that help and support. We had lots of fire brigade people attend, and police and emergency services and council people in that first year, and it was important for them to see us as a community, that we were okay, that we were surviving, and that we could get together as a good community. Because they walk away often from an event in the days afterwards and they don't have a lot of support and they don't know how we got on. So it's important to have them, to create space for them to come back and meet with us. And it's also an opportunity to look to the year ahead. But as I said, the proportion of that, you can't say, well, we can have a great year next year. It's still a shitty time. So it's words around, we'll work on this together, we'll meet again, we will do whatever, looking to a future. 2 years on, it starts to get a bit of a challenging time, because lots of people would like to think that we are recovered and we're finished and we're much better and all is well. For those who are impacted by those events, 2 years, it's still very, very fresh. You just got to the point where perhaps your life isn't as chaotic as it used to be. And it also, you need to recognise that people are recovering differently. There are people who've lost houses. There are people who've lost nothing. And I argue that the people who live in the area and didn't lose their houses are perhaps worse affected than those who did lose their houses, because they have to live in a horrible place for a while and they get no help and they have survivor guilt and all sorts of things. So people recover differently. So 2 years acknowledging the event and losses, reflect. So that's again, it did happen. You need to understand. You need to say it. But you can start reflecting on the community journey over the last 2 years, the achievements and successes, and you can increase that looking ahead as to where we're going and what might happen over the next 2 years, or the next years. 3 years I found to be much more positive, and people were happy to see each other, lots of hugs and kisses, as with all the others, of course. The losses are still fresh, but it's a much more positive environment. People are getting their lives together. Things are happening. Houses are starting to go up, maybe. Infrastructure is starting to be repaired. And so you can do a lot more around acknowledging what has been achieved and thanking people and celebrating success. 4 and 5 years depends on your community as to what is needed. 5 years tends to be a bit of a marker. Perhaps simpler, perhaps it's just about meeting together, perhaps it's a community dinner, some sort of community gathering, some formality, but mainly about being together. Whereas the previous years, formality is quite important. 10 years, I was the chair of the 10-year anniversary working group and talked to Dr. Rob about why is 10 years important. And his response was that it's that really important marker in time for people to put the event into history and to very much look forward to their future. From a personal perspective, I was a fire person until about 7 or 8 years after 2009, and about that time I started reorganising my brain started reorganising itself, and I started looking forward to the future. We found that having a 10-year anniversary, which was a very big event, that's the crowd there. We had over 800 people from our community and lots of other communities as well. So it was a time to place the event into history and look to their future. We had a theme which was remember, reflect and recognise. So it was remembering the event, reflecting on where we have been as a community and recognising the people who helped us and the people who had led our recovery. And so it was a time to acknowledge the event, put it into the history of our community and the history of our own lives, and look forward to our new life. A really, really important moment, and we did it well, and it kind of gave people the okay to move forward into their new life. In terms of ongoing, that's very much up to the community and the event. We still meet on the 7th of February every year at the memorial. The numbers sort of wax and wane a little bit. It was going down, but now we're starting to see different people coming to our anniversaries, and that's 16 years on now. So people recovering in their own time, providing an opportunity to get together is really important. I don't know how long that goes on for. I can't see an end to it. It's getting simpler. We get together, we read the names of people who died, and we give lots of hugs and kisses and then go home. Thanks, Carmel. Planning and managing anniversaries. So when you're planning an anniversary, you need to understand what you're trying to do. What is the context? What was the event? Who was the affected community? This is particularly important for events which have a dispersed community. So the Port Arthur massacre, the Cyclone Tracy in Darwin affected lots of people. They ended up all over the place. So how do you run an anniversary to include all those people? Where is the best place to have it? What are the range of losses? Were deaths involved? And deaths change everything. That's a really important thing. It's really important to talk about what is the feel of the event. What do you want it to feel like? Do you want it to feel like a solemn, sad event? Do you want it to feel sad but uplifting? Do you want it to be a celebration? And that depends on timing. And what's the purpose of the event? I've seen some events which were run by like a school concert. So there was, kids singing, and there was this, and there was poetry and some music and that sort of thing. But it really missed the point of what this particular anniversary is about and what we're trying to achieve. So be very clear about what you want to achieve with this event. Emotional considerations. Where is everyone at? What's everyone feeling? What are the majority of people feeling, but what are some others? The majority of people can be okay and want to get on with the rest of their lives and forget about the event. But there are other people who still need to be cared for and cared about. You can have events that are sad and sweet at the same time. So you can't not be sad, particularly if there are deaths. But it can also be positive. Who is it for? Is it just for the people who are impacted? Is it for their supporters? Is it for emergency services? Is it for a whole bunch of people? So understanding who needs to be involved, and then getting about how do we communicate, how do we send out invitations? Do we send out invitations, or is it just a Facebook page? The setting and the timing. Where will we do it, and what's the appropriate timing for all of the above? There's logistical stuff about seating, if it's summer, shade, sound systems, drinking water if it's summer, all the things that you need to think about to make this actually happen, and a good, safe, comfortable place for people to be in. Catering, are we going to provide, bring your own plate? It might be barbecue, or do we get it professionally catered? Depends on the timing again. And that will affect the budget and the funding. If you're going for any sort of logistics, you're going to need some sort of funding. May come through grants, may come through local government. It could be, if you've set up a community trust fund or something like that, it might come through there. I need to talk about whether this is community-led or government-led. Often anniversaries are organised by often the local government, sometimes the state government. And they're often they often don't reflect the needs of the affected community terribly well. They're a bit like a school concert. They're done, all the right things are said, but it doesn't really engage the impacted community and what their needs are. Inversely, if you run a community led by the community, which is what we did in Strathewan, you're much more able to understand where people are at and what their needs are at that time. But you do run into trouble with, how do we pay for this? How do we organise? What are the logistics? I'm an impacted person as well. How do I look after myself? So particularly with the 10th anniversary, we were able to get a significant budget, and we got support from our local council with running the event. We got their event manager on site, and he did lots of running around beforehand, and on the day supported us with just doing stuff, moving chairs, changing things around, making sure the sound system worked and all those sort of things. So getting some help with that. So it's great I think community-led is the way to go, and that might be a working group led by community with government participants who can support. Thanks, Campbell. Conducting anniversaries. So what's the theme? What are we trying to do? Who do we need to speak? Do we need people of authority? Do we need religious people? What sort of symbols and ceremonies are we going to have? For the 10th anniversary, we had quite a range of speakers, and that was important for that event. We had a local choir, which had involved some of our local people and was a good healing thing, who sang. We had school children from the local school singing. We had a number of people speaking about, from the oldest resident in Strathewan, talking about the history of Strathewan, through to people who just recently moved into Strathewan and their story of why they moved to Strathewan and what their hope for the future is. So it kind of has a historical and a forward look as well. In terms of ceremonies and symbols, can you go back one slide, please, Carmel? That bowl there with the rose petals on it, at the end of the I think it was the second or third year anniversary, we organised a big bowl of water, and at the end of the ceremony, we invited people to come and get some rose petals from baskets that kids were holding and spread them on the bowl of water and say some words or leave their memories there. So that was a good thing. Thanks, Carmel. Who will lead this? Do you want a community person to lead this? Do you want someone outside? What do you need? It's important to have a shared experience so that it brings people together and acknowledges that this event impacted everyone. Above all, it needs to be respectful. You need to understand where people are at, what the needs are, and just understand it. It's not about what you want out of it, it's what people need. And that goes to allowing it to be personal for everyone. It's not what you want, or it's not what you think. It's about making it inclusive and allowing people to get out of it what they want individually. So next, thanks, Carmel. So that's pretty much it. If you need support, if you're running an anniversary or going to in the future, tragically, you feel free to contact us, the Disaster Recovery Mentors, back through Red Cross. So that's me. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Steve. It's always a pretty humbling experience and a bit of an honour getting to hear you speak. And for anyone who doesn't already know Steve, we definitely use a lot of the information that you pulled together, among others, around the Strathewan Community Renewal Association as excellent case studies and stories of what people have done before that's made a real difference. So thank you for not only leading that process, but also kind of being part of creating artifacts that people that come after are able to draw on and learn from, and also for being a mentor. We love it.
Thanks, Erin. Thank you.
I'm going to throw to Jo, who's going to talk about her experience with Anniversaries and supporting the school community after the Kurnell Tornado. Thanks, Jo.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. You can turn to the next slide. Thanks, Carmel. And let me apologise for these busy-looking crowded slides, but this is actually an extract from a document that we had to do called external validation as part of the school leadership process and what the department requires for us. And I decided to devote a section on community, but also on relationships and connections, because that's what we found was so valuable during this time. So on Wednesday, the 16th of December, 2015, which was the last day of school, and in some ways that was really lucky for us because all of the children were at school and not wandering around the beautiful little community of Kurnell, which, if any of you know it, has around 2,000 residents, is on a peninsula surrounded by water and the national park. And there's the children there often fish and surf and ride their bikes and wander the streets. And I'm so glad that on this particular day they were all trapped inside the school because the school had very limited damage compared to the rest of the community. And so the tornado hit around 10:30 in the morning. We were all inside, and all our carefully practiced drills, evacuation emergency drills, were sort of a little defunct because all the power went down. So the system of actually buzzing 3 times or this long whistles or whatever symbols we had at the time for emergency evacuations were not able to be played. So we relied on the teachers' very good common sense. Our staff's amazing. Common sense and just staying in the classroom when they could see the winds were really picking up outside. So the children and staff themselves had very little knowledge of what was happening outside in the community, which was a blessing. After the initial impact of the storm hit, we evacuated classrooms into the hall so that we could all be together, and there was access to toilets, and it was very near the canteen so that we could have water and food, as we didn't know how long we would be inside and staying safe. We were very lucky. The emergency services were there really quickly, and I had communication through the mobile phones, and also was able to communicate with parents and let them know that the children were safe and that the school was relatively untouched through our social media page, so our Facebook page. There are 147 houses that were damaged, and luckily, unlike Steve's experience, there were no deaths. So we were so grateful for that. And I don't even think there were any pets lost. So somehow everyone managed to stay safe during that time, and a lot of parents and community were outside of Kurnell when this happened. There was a big one of the telegraph poles, and there were live wires across the road, which made it hard for people to get in and out of initially as well. But we were evacuated to the local high school not until later in the afternoon, just before home time, and that meant that parents could pick up their children from the high school. But the staff themselves were actually assured that we'd be able to get in the next day because, as you know, the last day of school, there were lots of things that they wanted to give the kids, little presents, and we had all sorts of activities. We do our big farewell to year 6 as they go off into high school, all these unfinished things to do. And as we drove out of Kurnell, we could see the damage for the first time, and the children actually got to experience, oh my gosh, that's my house, or that's my neighbour's house, or look what's happened here. So to come in to help and support our families the next day was really important to our staff, and we were assured that we'd be able to do this. Overnight, the Kurnell community was zoned as a natural disaster, and therefore no one was allowed back in the next day. So we drove out in the morning wanting to see our families and our kids, and were turned around by a police roadblock or state emergency service. I can't even remember who it was then. I remember sort of saying, no, you promised we could get back in. At the time, we were turned around, and we actually had, we all met at the local high school again, and the boss there, Tony Ibrahim, such a lovely man, he gave us an area to be together in. And the beautiful Cassie Romberg, who is our school chaplain, and despite that title, that's not a religious position. She is she does pastoral care with the community, with the school and the community. She's a beautiful link between what happens at school and what happens at home, and is such a support for both for staff, for children, and for parents in the community. So she worked with staff that day to sort of debrief with them about what had happened during the tornado, and our feelings, the frustration and the hurt and the disappointment about not being able to get in to see our kids and our families. Cassie also was instrumental in contacting services such as Stormbirds and putting things in motion so that to help deal with the aftermath from the situation. And I realise that this isn't all about, disasters and what happened. It's just that the things, I guess I was naive and didn't think about the fallout and the ongoing trauma that's caused by such an event. And even though we didn't have a loss of lives, we had a lot of families that might have been a little unstable, or marriages that were having difficulty fall apart after such an event, because it really had pushed emotions and things to the absolute limit. That little picture of the little parachute there that you can see on the screen was when, a couple of weeks later, when everyone was on holidays, including staff, we as a staff went into Kurnell. We had to make sure that this came from the P&C, because officially we weren't allowed to, for work health and safety reasons, go into Kurnell, but because the P&C had organised an event, we went in under that umbrella, and we actually just had a chance to connect with the community, see the kids. Parents could leave their kids for a while if they wanted to and go home and sort out some of the things that were happening at home, or they could just stay and, have the hugs and things that Steve was talking about that was so important at the time. So we did that up at the local park, up at Bonner Park. So it wasn't on the school ground, so we didn't get into trouble for work health and safety from the department or any other official bodies. But we met at the park thanks to the P&C. Yes, thanks. You can move to the next slide. Thanks, Carmel. So what happened was Red Cross got in contact with us, and a lovely lady called Alex Tanfield was the representative from Red Cross that came. And together with Cassie and myself, we met every month with community and emergency services, with the local council and key stakeholders in the area. Kurnell is, I describe, a little like Summer Bay, and I used to say Summer Bay without the drama, but having been there so long now, I say it's just like Summer Bay. Beautiful little community, doesn't have a lot of infrastructure, so really the school was the hub of the recovery and the recovery project, and getting communication in and organising things through there. It was really important that we met each month with key people from community and also all the emergency services and government areas, because, as Steve said, people have the best of intentions coming from the local council, coming from government, but they don't know what people need or what people want. And we were able to say to them, actually, we would like to employ Cassie, our school chaplain, for a few extra days to provide pastoral care for students and families, and the local preschool that wasn't part of the department and was sort of on their own, a community-based preschool. We want to employ her so that she can give some pastoral care, because she had built that trust and she was known in the community. So the community were able to give feedback and say, no, this is what we want, this is what we value, this is what we need help in, which was really fabulous. And hand in hand, Cassie was able to coordinate with Red Cross, with other services, things, programs such as, and Cassie, feel free to join in if you need to add anything here, but I know she was helping coordinate the pillowcase project, which is sort of a well-being, but also preparing kids that, we can make a little pillowcase and we can put our most important things that we want to take with us, so that if anything happens in the future, we're ready to go and we have the things that matter most to us in our pillowcase, and we can just grab that pillowcase and take it with us, and that will help us feel prepared and feel secure and safe. There were all sorts of Seasons for Growth and other wellbeing programs that Cassie helped to provide for not just our kids, but also to our parents as well. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So 6 months after the tornado, what was felt in community was that every year previously, the local Kurnell Progress Society or Association used to run a community event of Christmas carols in the local park down the road. And because the tornado had hit on the 16th of December and a lot of families had been impacted and a lot of homes destroyed, people had felt like that they hadn't had a Christmas, that they hadn't had the chance to get together and come together as a community and sing and enjoy and all the things that they do every year. So we decided we'd have a Christmas in July event to mark the 6-month anniversary of the tornado. And it was lovely because it was community-led. Red Cross helped facilitate it. So did, they were Caltex at the time, now they're Ampol, but some of the bigger businesses in the community helped provide funding. But it was also a lovely a thing that was held by the community, and it had a lovely feel. And the feedback to some of the Red Cross volunteers that were there, which was included in Alex's report, Red Cross sort of wrap up at the end of the 12 months, was that it was just what they needed, and it was so nice to be able to catch up with neighbours. And after having gone through that, we'd been through sessions with insurance companies that hadn't paid, and we'd had forums of, the frustrating red tape and everything that surrounds recovering from such a disaster and getting your homes and your lives, trying to get them, pull them back and piece together. It was so nice to come to an event where we were just celebrating 6 months. It's okay. We're all here. We're all working together. We have each other. Look at all these fabulous connections we have. And we had Chris Newton, who's part of the Red Cross. She came out and did a community recovery talk. We had the school choir. We had stalls. We had local people had had produce and things that they made. There's a lady who makes candles, or all sorts of things. They had their opportunity to sell and to just be there and be together, which was really nice. Okay, the next one, please, Carmel. At our 1-year anniversary event on December the 15th, 2016, so it was the day before, so it was the 16th of December 2015 when the tornado happened, so reverse those, it's 15th of December 2016, nearly a year to the day of the tornado. We hosted a Kurnell Community Day, and this was community-led as well. So numerous organisations, including Red Cross and all of our emergency services and our community services and parents and kids, we all came together and we had a really lovely feel-good event at the school. Cassie ran a number of wellbeing sessions. So the kids had art therapy, and they had mindfulness, and lots of parents could go in and actually experience these workshops with the kids. So they enjoyed that. It was lovely. There was free food, so we were supported again by local businesses, and it was just a really lovely feel-good experience and so nice. I heard children thanking emergencies, like the fire brigade. I mean, Kurnell has their own local just rural fire service, and it was so nice to hear them, thanks for helping us, and we love the fire brigade and we love the police, and it was just a really lovely event. And I guess unlike the anniversaries that Steve is part of, because we hadn't had that loss of life, I mean, we had family breakups, and in that way there was loss. And we'd had people who had moved from the community who felt that they weren't safe any longer in Kurnell and would like to start again somewhere new. So apart from that loss, though, it was more a celebration of resilience and a celebration of our connections and doing it together. And, you know, we made it, and how we all pulled together and worked together to make it a success. All right, the next one, thank you. This is just a little bit, I was just showing you some of the workshops and things that Cassie does, and some of her ongoing work that she does at the school. And for a long time, she helped support students who would have anxiety and stress and display behaviours of distress around every time the clouds came over, or there was a storm, or they knew that there was going to be a storm happening. And Cassie was there to help with the counselling or support of them, and also referring them to services such as counselling if they needed to. But she also ran, you know, parent workshops, and still we had buddy benches and all the things that schools do in such a fabulous way around wellbeing and supporting each other. And Cassie was instrumental in our recovery, as were a number of key organisations and key people. But yeah, that was part of her role. Building positive relationships. Okay, thank you, Carmel. The next one. And this last little slide is just around how we keep Kurnell connected, and how important our P&C is, and how we get out messages, or how we promote things that are going on in the community, and how we used this platform during the time of recovery. And that was our Facebook, our newsletters, our assemblies, our P&C meetings, inviting parents up, surveying, getting feedback from parents and community as to what they value and what they need and what they wanted. That little picture with the kids holding up the sign at "We love our P&C" was because we had a couple of positions not filled just afterwards. I think people thought they were very busy, or they were very busy putting their lives back together and didn't have time to be on the P&C. But through a little bit of guilt and a little bit of bribery and please, we filled the positions, and they are such a key, the P&C is such a key part of the school. It's whether it be in school planning or what we're doing as far as celebrating and marking anniversaries, they're very important. I'm not sure what's happening as far as the 10 years coming up this year, because I am on leave, but I know that it will be community-led. I know that if whatever they decide, I have a feeling it will come from the Kurnell Progress Association. But I think it would be lovely for them to acknowledge the 10 years and celebrate being such a resilient little community and such a fabulous community to be part of, because they really are precious. They really are, you know, a special group of people, and they all banded together to help each other. And luckily, a lot of them were tradies, so that was very helpful, because when the tornado hit on the 16th of December, of course, across January there, December and January, that's when all the tradies go on holidays. And so it was hard for people to get the houses even into livable or into states where they could, you know, be okay staying there. So yes, we learned a lot of things from the Kurnell tornado, and I learned a lot in regards to the impact on students and families and community in the fallout and the aftermath of such an event. Even if there was no loss of life, there were significant losses, as Steve was saying, as far as environment and as far as families and all the other things that happen, memories and things, I guess, because a lot of, you know, people lost everything in their houses. So, yeah. Thank you. And that is me, but I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Jo. It's really interesting to see your experiences and Steve's next to each other. And I think so many commonalities coming through about the need to feel safe, to physically safe, but also mentally and psychologically safe. I really loved how you both talked about the need to be connected and bring people together. Two different, very different, I guess, contexts, which is why it's so important. But I think the fact that you're both looking at community-led recovery and knowing the audience and really taking time to think, who is this for and what do we want to get out of it? It's just, yeah, it's really something really special to come out of something so hard for people. So thank you so much for sharing. There are a ton of questions coming through, and I have a bunch as well. So for people, just a reminder to use the Q&A function in the chat. You can upvote as well, and I will try to have a look in the chat if you can't see, but please use the Q&A as a first go. So I guess something that, and I think you both will have some perspectives on this, but I just thought it would be good to get both of your reflections about what do you do when some people want to acknowledge the anniversary and other people don't? And I think you both had very interesting perspectives on what happens when some people, I mean, everybody has their own way of processing events, but yeah. Might throw to you first, Steve.
Thanks, Erin. Yeah, that's not uncommon, and it changes over time. So as time goes by, people who perhaps didn't suffer so much impact sort of want to get on with their life and to stop thinking about it. There are other people who are very impacted who would like to stop thinking about it as well. Like I said, there's a community not far from us who just didn't do a great job of bringing themselves together or leading or managing the anniversaries, and that's still playing out today. They still don't mention the fire, which is a bit of a tragedy and hurts individuals as well as the community. In terms of how do you manage that, I don't think you can. Well, you can't keep everyone happy. Impossible, never going to happen. If you ask everyone what they want, you're going to get, the number of people plus 10 different opinions. So that's not a great way to go because you'll end up offending nearly everyone. So it's around understanding what are you trying to achieve? What do you want to do? And I would say you're better off to do something than do nothing just because some people feel uncomfortable about it. Acknowledging what's happened is really healthy from a community perspective, but also from individual's perspective. So you're better to err on the side of doing something than doing nothing. And I think it's around creating the opportunity for people to participate in the way that suits them. Some people people do choose not to attend our anniversaries. For some people, it doesn't mean anything anymore. For others, they just want to do it their own way, to be by themselves or to, think about it in their own space, be with their own family rather than with a bunch of people. So I think it's understanding what the significance is, having a sense of what's important in the impacted community, and then create the opportunity or opportunities for people to participate if they want to.
Yeah.
I'd just add too, I had a number of people come and talk about feeling guilty, that survivor's guilt, that, you know, so nothing had happened to their house and the house next door had been destroyed. And so for them it was difficult too. But the bottom line I used when we were putting together the anniversaries was that it's all about, well, it was significantly about the kids, like it was what we thought would be best for children. And whenever I use that as an argument or a statement, we're doing this because we feel this is what the kids need, or this is what the children need, then I find that people are really on board with that.
Absolutely. And as I was hearing you talk, Jo, I was thinking, I wish I'd listened to you speak beforehand. When after the cyclone Seroja in WA, we definitely were seeing a lot of feedback coming in around kids being worried every time the wind blew or every time it rained, and thinking about how to kind of re-engage the kids around the hazard, and so that it wasn't always a big scary thing or a big trigger, but to think about how you sort of can re-engage with that stuff. So I don't know, I really like the what do you call those things? The
pillowcase project.
No, you had the photo of the big
the parachute when we all got together.
I love that. Yeah, I'm like having a bit of fun with that. I know in WA we did some kite making workshops, and the kids went out and flew their kites, and were sort of playing with that, and yeah, it was really special for everyone, not just the kids. I think some of the adults had a lot of fun as well.
I know that for a while we had lessons K to 6 around weather and how it's not always, you know, a bad thing. Like it's, you know, the big winds aren't always a bad thing, and how, so that children had a little more understanding of weather and what happens, and how it's stressing the importance that this is such a rare event. So it's not every time the wind blows it's going to turn into a tornado.
Yeah, definitely. I guess that makes me think of a question around, like, I know this year we've got anniversaries of a few significant events, and I know the Northern Rivers and Southeast Queensland have 3 years on after the 2022 flooding, and again have just been impacted by Cyclone Alfred. And I guess it's a question I think is burning for all of us around how do you manage and think about anniversary planning and the long-term nature of this stuff when disasters keep hitting. So for communities who've been impacted by multiple events, have you got any thoughts or tips around how to plan and think about managing in that context, I guess?
I guess in Strathewan we're blessed that we haven't had follow-up disasters. I think it's, again, very much that community-based, having an honest discussion about what's important at the moment. How do we recognise what's happened previously without diminishing what's happening currently, or to fit it within? So it will change the context, it will change the feel, it will change what you're trying to achieve. But again, if you ask those questions honestly and with a broad enough or a respected group of leaders perhaps, you'll come up with a solution, and it'll be different for everyone. So it really is individual community based, depending on their stuff.
I guess too, Erin, part of the recovery is around preparedness and giving people skills so that it empowers them, so that if something like this was to happen again, not necessarily a tornado, could be a flood, could be a fire, that here are some things that we can do so that, you know, a little bit like I explained about the pillowcase for kids, but also obviously for adults. These are the things that we would do next time or differently, or these are the things that we can do. So I know that I've got some control over it. And I know, Steve, when you were talking about the fires, you said that you survived because of your knowledge and your of fires and things. So it's giving giving people knowledge and preparing them and giving them some sort of power and ownership about what will happen next time. Sorry.
Oh, you're right. Thanks. That's power and ownership, I think, is really important. And yeah, hearing you talk, Steve, about being a fire person for sort of 8 years until you sort of were able to look forward. And Jo, you saying you're a community and child person who had to sort of become a tornado wind person. It's definitely some cross learnings, I'm sure.
Yes.
A big one that we haven't really talked about yet from Malcolm, and this is specifically for you, Steve, about or some perspectives around cooperating with and managing the media interests that can come up around anniversary times.
Yeah, thanks. And sorry, Malcolm, I should have had that on my list of things to organise. But it is one of the things to consider. Our working with media, we found that if you work with them and talk with them, they're generally very respectful and generally prepared to do what you want. So it's talking with them, working with them, and then setting the rules. So this is, in this event, you can participate, you're welcome to, but these are the rules. We don't want you interviewing individuals. We will organise a spokesperson who will answer questions. You can film from this perspective and this distance, and this is a sort of time that you'll be allowed, and this is what we don't want you to do. If you don't have some sort of agreements and some discussion, then they will do whatever they want to get a story or to get the vision or whatever they need to in the timing that gets them onto the front page or the 6 o'clock news. So you're far better off to work with them. You can't ignore them, but have the honest discussion, and by being positive, you can then set the rules.
I love that. Setting the rules and setting them early and being super clear. I think that's really, really important. And we know that we'll always have a lot of media attention during a disaster and the media aftermath, but things like anniversary events definitely spike people's interest.
Also, if you've got a local government that's got a media person, you can also engage them sometimes in managing the media and working on your behalf, that they can intercede, they can be the media manager on the day or something like that.
Yeah, I really like that. Jo, how about, I imagine looking after kids and doing it through a school lens would add some complexities around managing media. Have you got any reflections?
It does, but unlike Steve, we do have a media person, so we can't say anything really to the media, and the media knows without going through the department. So there's a hotline that we ring and say, you know, I've got this news crew or I've got this newspaper that wants to ask questions about blah blah blah, and what can I and can't I say, sort of thing. So they kind of know to go through the department, so it's not such a big issue for us.
I like that, though, is like redirecting and making sure that there's a key contact that can manage that on your behalf. And I think that's really important. Here's one from Bridget, which I really like. And I was reflecting on this. I think we were talking just before we started the webinar today, but about the role of storytelling in remembering and recognizing anniversaries. And I'm thinking back to, I've written it down and circled it and highlighted it, Steve, remember, reflect, and recognize. But yeah, just your reflections on the role of storytelling, and I guess thinking about, Steve, you were saying that 16 years after the 2009 bushfires, and I can't do the maths, Joe. No, I do know. 10 years post tornado. It's a long time. And I think, I know some of my friends and family have just been commenting recently of like, oh, were there floods in Townsville? Is that still happening in and around Townsville? And I think, the media cycles and public interest kind of moves on quite quickly. But for the people really involved, I think, have you got any reflections on sort of the long-term nature and that side of thing?
Storytelling's wonderful. You can't do enough of it. And again, it depends on the timing. In the early years, the first year, you probably don't want individuals up on a stage telling their story because everyone's got largely the same story. Everyone knows what happened, and the storytelling isn't so great in a public sense. But the opportunity to get together, give each other a hug, tell your stories then in your controlled context with the right people, that sort of thing is a good thing, and that happens for just about ever. I know that, I'm amazed that I still don't know a lot of people's individual stories in Strathewan. I just know that things happened and their stories are very similar to ours, and didn't really want to know the details or share so much of the details. How do we keep it going forever? We in Strathewan also led the development of our own bushfire memorial, which is an extraordinary thing. Wonderful design. We engaged professional designers to do it for us and construct it. And the memorial actually has the story, our own stories engraved into sandstone around the memorial. So if anyone wants to have a look at that, I think you can probably Google Strathewan Community Bushfire Memorial. I think there's certainly some stories on the Big Stories Small Towns website you can find. There might be something on YouTube. In terms of collecting stuff and having a permanent history record, for the 10th anniversary, we produced a book which says Under Sugarloaf, although it looks like it's reading backwards to me. And that it's not a story as such. It doesn't track everything through. It just has lots of photos, has lots of history. So it goes from Strathewan early days to, in the middle of it, we have a section which remembers the people who died. It has sections on our rebuilds and our getting together as community, and it has 4 or 5 pages at the end of it that lists all those who helped us and contributed, including our community leaders and committee members and such things. So it's and that was given. We printed 1,000 of them, and we gave them to people who came to the 10th anniversary. So everyone took away a book, and that was a great way of making a permanent record of what happened, particularly for people who were involved and interested. And we still have some copies to give to new residents and interesting visitors.
From a school perspective, I guess it was around facilitating opportunities for people to share their stories. So there was some teacher training around how to to talk and support students if they wanted to talk about their own experiences and what they were going through after the tornado. So we ran that as part of our staff development day on the first day back of school, so before the students actually started for the new year. And it was also about, Cassie and I used to run, like, it was called Kurnell Coffee Club. We just once a week, there was a period of time, I think it was a Wednesday morning, where parents could drop off their kids, and if they wanted to stay and have a coffee with Cassie and I and just talk about whatever, they could ask about what's happening at school, or they could talk about their own experiences. It was that opportunity for people to share, and particularly the coffee club was an informal thing, so there was always like Cassie would whip up a cake or a slice or something, and so it was just over a tea or a coffee. And from those conversations, we were able to again get feedback from our community about what they wanted or they needed, and where to next. And we could take that back to our monthly our recovery meetings, as part of the wellbeing and working group with Alex and the Red Cross team. And
yeah, thank you. This is from an anonymous attendee, but I think there's sort of two elements to this, and I think it ties into what we were talking about just before the webinar as well. But well, and I guess there's sort of two that are related. So one is Melinda is talking about that they're gathering information about the tornado that hit their community in 1973. But 52 years on, a lot of people have no knowledge about that event. And she was saying it's a good reminder to be ready for any disaster. So it ties in nicely to what you were talking about community preparedness, but also about remembering the resilience of their community. And then I think that ties in really nicely from this question from an anonymous attendee around how do we maintain and embed memories and learnings of disasters for the next generation. And I'm not entirely sure if that's for kids and members of the school community, or if it's for other people who might have been in other places during significant events that we won't mention where they were at that time, but knew what was going on but weren't necessarily in it.
You got anything on that, Jo?
oh yes, sorry, I was defer to you first, Steve. And then I
thought I'd mix it up a bit.
Pop in.
Take it by surprise.
I guess there was a lot more social media and things around when our tornado hit, and I mean there were things like the kids made up a little sort of play and reenacted the tornado and what happened at the time, with a little bit of dramatic license included, but I guess it's around what we were talking about as in preparing to, if in case there are other disasters, but also remembering, like you said, Steve, like always remembering that event. And we have documented, I mean, it's part of our school evaluation, but also that the council has a document, the Kurnell Progress Association has a document. It was part of our when we did our 100 years celebration of the school. Recently in 2020, because of COVID, we had to postpone it a year. So instead of 2021, it was 2022. We had a section or an area of memorabilia around that, and everybody from not just our school community but from the local community came to the 100-year celebration and had a look at what had happened, and also had their own stories to share and things. So I think being part of a community that really values its history and values the events, and also and providing those opportunities to share stories, but also preparing people in case things like that happen in the future is really important. And I mean, the local council, I will acknowledge, they do their part as well.
And I think Anniversaries actually provide you with a pretty good opportunity to collect the history. So it might, and that probably doesn't happen in the first few years. So it might be 10 years, it might be 25 years, something like that is an opportunity. Probably 25 years is good because people are still alive, people can still tell stories. It's remote enough that it may not offend people or hurt them. And it also gets into the next generation, as was asked. It might be a museum piece, it might be a storybook, it might be a video story. And if it's a significant anniversary, it also provides you kind of a marker and a way of promoting it and seeking funding. So if you just want to do a story, then people go, well, whatever. If you're saying, it's 25 years, it's a big event, we need to collect this information, you've actually got a marketing tool to get funding.
Can I also add too that 10 years on means all of the children who are at school at the time of the tornado have moved on to high school, and we actually interviewed the students in high school about their recovery and the impact on them, and we have records of that as well. And Cassie helped facilitate that because the amazing person that she is sometimes works across into the high school as well.
I'm just mindful of the time, so I'm going to ask both of you one more question each. So I think, Joe, how do we involve children in planning for disaster anniversaries? Have you got any thoughts or reflections about how you were able to involve them in? I guess it probably needs a different approach to a committee.
We have a number of formats where children can give feedback to us as staff. And one of those is the Student Representative Council, or the SRC. So anyone with kids on this format would know that they're in most schools. There's a little representative from each of the classes that meet weekly, and then they take back from those SRC meetings back into their classroom what they feel is important, and it works both ways. They take from the classroom, they talk about it with their class and their class teacher, around what they would like to see happening or what they think is important, and then they take those back to the SRC meetings as well, and then of course the staff discuss that as well. So providing opportunities for the kids to give feedback, and even if they're not on the SRC, they have to have a voice, which is why we have a representative from each class. But we also have other formats where that they can feedback about what they think is important as well. So it's really important to have student voice, and it's just like community-led from thinking of a school as a community itself. So it's important to hear what the kids value and what the kids want and what's important to them, because if it's meaningful to them, they're going to remember and it's going to stay with them. If we put what we think they need in place, it's not going to stick, and it's not going to be something that is memorable and special to them.
Thanks, Joe. And it's so funny hearing you talk, because I imagine that it's pretty similar for adults as well. When we talk about community-led, there's definitely a reason. I just want to touch before I throw to you, Steve. Christy's put in the chat and I'll do my best to read it out. So they've recently held a 1 year on commemorative event for a bushfire impacted community in Victoria. They purposefully used the word commemoration to acknowledge the day, which framed it as less of a celebration than the word anniversary might be associated with. It was very successful. David Younger was engaged and spoke at that event, and they did some community consultation and about acknowledging the community's journey But once they sort of asked those questions, there was a lot of change of community members' minds about actually having the event, and we're happy for them to organise it. And I think some more reflections about how some people don't necessarily want to attend events, but they can choose not to. And then sort of that thing we see a lot. It's just flipped out for me. No, but people not wanting to acknowledge the trauma and distress that they've been through, but might be more happy to thank their neighbours and volunteers for assisting the event, which sounds very much like what the community for you, Joe, were really keen with the emergency services acknowledgements, but very different to what you experienced, Steve, around more and more people coming years after and coming back because of the importance of wanting to recognise and reflect. So on that, one last question for you, Steve. At what point do we stop commemorating a disaster anniversary, and what are the signs?
No idea. Not there yet. Have a look at Anzac Day. It still goes on, and it nearly died probably 20 years ago. It was getting smaller and smaller and less important, and now it's bigger and more important than it's ever been, I think. It's very much around the community. It's very much around individuals. If it's done and dusted, then you'll know. But if it's not, then someone will step up at some stage and say, we oughta. I really don't know, but you will know. You'll just know.
I think you'd probably find out pretty quickly if you stop too soon.
Yes, exactly. That's often how I talk about disaster recovery things. If you're producing a newsletter or something like that, and you want to know if it's time to close it, all you have to do is say, we're going to close it. And if there's an outburst, then you know you're too soon. And if no one cares, then it's about the right time.
Yeah. I agree. I feel like it's a bit of a trick question, but, how long's a piece of string? But also, I think you're right in terms of connecting it back into community context and listening to the wants and needs of the community or the school community or the kids, and making sure that they're involved in the process is probably the most key factor. That's all we've got time for today, with 1 minute left. Massive thank you, Steve and Joe, for giving us your time today. I've learnt so much, and judging by the comments and questions from the chat and the participants today, I think everyone's really enjoyed it. So thank you so much. For our participants, we have recorded today. We will send out the recording after this session, and it will be hosted on the Australian Institute of Disaster Resilience webpage. So we will send that out as a follow-up alongside some of the links that have been shared in the chat today. When you exit today's session, you'll be asked to complete a short survey. Pretty please, if you could pop in some of your thoughts or comments on today's. It helps us plan for next topics that we hope are really useful for people supporting communities, working communities, or the volunteers who find themselves in it, and the community members who find themselves in and amongst the chaos, who have to sort of figure out how to look forward and how to bring people along with them. And it's no easy task. So thank you, everyone, for coming. Until next time, stay safe, take care, and look after yourselves. Big thank you.
Thanks, Erin. Thanks, everyone. See you later.
Bye.